Reality is debatable. Mysteries, mindfuck and magic. A podcast where the imaginal meets the phenomenal. With Bernhard Reicher and Rudolf Stark.
Susan Demeter St Clair, welcome to our show.
Oh, thank you for having me on. I'm so excited to talk to you guys today.
Hi.
I love the show.
Thank you so much.
At least a few English-speaking episodes we had so far. So
Yeah.
We talked with Joshua Cutchin, and I think in inviting him on the show, we talked with you as well. And now finally we got you on record.
Yes. Josh is a good friend who also participated in UFOs Reframing the Debate. So that's how I know Josh. And we also have that common interest in Fairie Folk and fairy lore. And yeah, so I'm excited to be here too. Maybe we can expand a little bit on that conversation, because I'm also very much into the sort of the fairies and the fair folk. And yeah.
So that makes UFO, four of us.
Yeah. UFO Reframing the Debate is a book we already mentioned it in several of our shows. It's a great compendium of several short essays of different people. You wrote an essay. Joshua Cutchin wrote one. Red Pill Junkie, Mike McClelland, and Greg Bishop, and a few others. And it's amazing. It's an amazing book, just to give a different viewpoint on the whole topic. And it's just right up our alley. So it was a great read. I really enjoyed, especially also your essay in it. So thanks for that.
Oh. Well, thank you. I think it's an important book in that it does explore different sort of perspectives, including a magical perspective in at least a couple of the essays on a potential of what may be behind the UFO phenomena. I mean, I try to remain sort of neutral because I really don't 100% have a good idea of what is really behind it. Like, I'm not 100% married to anything. So I think that it's good to just explore different ideas away from the standard that it's either nothing or that it's aliens. And but I am also an experiencer, so I do have some ideas, but within my own belief systems of what might be behind it. But the book as a whole is something just to sort of kickstart people's thoughts and ideas. And I think that's how we first got in contact, is over Robbie's book. And that's something I'm very proud to have been a part of. And trying to further sort of our knowledge a little bit, at least ideas on UFOs and what they might be.
Yeah, you have been involved with ufological research for a long time, haven't you?
More than 20 years. I started off having very strange experiences as a child, which I more put down to ghosts, because I really didn't have an interest in UFOs when I was a child, but I was interested in the supernatural. And then later on, as a young adult in my early 20s, I had a UFO sighting that really sort of changed sort of my way of thinking and paradigm and that. And then I started getting into UFOs, and I didn't really sort of find anything that helped me to try and explain what I saw. So from there, I began researching and then actively sort of investigating UFO reports. And then my ideas on what UFOs might be and how to approach the subject has sort of changed and morphed over time. And now I'm in a mindset where I'm doing more things to sort of provoke and invoke the phenomena based more into my own sort of pagan and spiritual beliefs. So I'm sort of taking stuff from that, stuff from maybe what you might consider chaos magic, and just UFO knowledge in general, and just sort of smooshing them all together. And I'm devising like little experiments that I've been doing with some success as well. And that's sort of where I'm at with the UFOs right now, is I'm trying to figure out ways that perhaps we can sort of invoke the phenomena and learn from it in a more real-time way than whereas before I would be, say, taking in reports or things after the fact. Now I'm more about the experience itself and trying to invoke it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. That's nearly the same approach that we have.
Okay.
Yeah.
I can tell you a little bit about an experiment that I had completed online a couple years ago. One of the things that we did is I created a group of people. Some of them were magical people, some of them were not. Just a pool. I kind of wanted to pool from an eclectic group of people that were creative, but not necessarily magicians. So I got together 7 people and I created a sort of private group online. And for a year, we would concentrate and meditate together and just sort of talk and think about UFOs, while at the same time, I had picked out 6 UFO sort of hotspots that were around the globe, and then one place that just really it had nothing to do, at least as far as we knew, with UFOs. And I sort of put these coordinates, these geo coordinates together, and sort of had somebody other than was part of the group to pick out one of these geo coordinates and just sort of lock it away so we wouldn't see it. But that was basically the basic idea, is that we would have these geo coordinates and we would sort of concentrate on sending a light or a UFO, so to speak, into this area, hoping that eventually we would be able to look back at it and see if there was any increase in UFO activity. In that case, so the experiment ran for about a year. We were having a lot of synchronicities as a group and as individuals with each other in personal levels as well, not just necessarily the experiment. And then at the end of the year, I had a look at the coordinates to sort of end the experiment, and they turned out that it was Hessdalen, Norway, which has had a lot of UFO experience. So I was very excited because I saw the it's the farthest north of all these places, and so I knew it was Hessdalen right away. I was very excited, and then I noted that yes, indeed, in that year they had been reporting a lot more UFO sort of cases. So I take that as some sort of at least limited success, that we were having these synchronicities with Hessdalen and Norway, and then it turned out that this was the place, and yes, indeed, people seemed to, in at least 2017, be reporting a lot more of the light activity there. So I took that as a successful experiment in attempting to create a UFO sort of experience in a non-local and remotely sort of way, because none of us were based there. We were all at different points in mostly North America, but that's where we were trying to send the light. So I hope this makes sense to you in some way, but it was one experiment that I did in attempting to create a UFO. Another one was writing a fictional narrative with another UFO experiencer, which again turned out to be the same location. So that in itself was weird. But these are the types of things that I've done, which are sort of half magic, half science sort of thing, half artistic, or a third artistic, sort of smushing them together in a very sort of chaos magic sort of way to try and create phenomena.
Sounds great. It sounds a bit like stuff we do also here. I mean, especially the as you mentioned, writing a fictional story. Like, I'm quite sure you're familiar with the work of Dr. Jeff Kripal, for example, the Mutants and Mystics and Supernatural and Authors of the Impossible. Those 3 books, especially about the paranormal. So, and yeah, like people like Grant Morrison, etc., have always there's this amazing experience of mixing fiction with reality and how those things interact. So that's also an approach that we take from time to time and are quite inspired by that work. And we talked about just briefly before we started to record the show. We have a UFO hotspot roughly 50 minutes, an hour away from where we live here in Graz, Styria, Austria, and we could try some experiments there, like you sending your or doing your stuff from Italy, and it might be interesting to sit there live and have a view over the valley and see if something comes up there in a live.
Yeah, that would be great.
Absolutely.
Why not? I mean, and we could sort of try different techniques. Like I could try sort of meditating on the location, in not knowing whether you guys are there or not, or, you know, we could try different sort of techniques sort of to see if it could produce something, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like,
let's concoct something.
Yeah, we could concoct something for sure. I find that spontaneousness seems to, whatever the phenomena is, I do believe it is something external outside of ourselves, whether it's a greater consciousness or an alien consciousness, I don't know. But I do believe that there is something else that is sort of co-creating with us. This is the thing that Greg Bishop had talked about, is the co-creation hypothesis, that we are creating with something. And I know that it seems to sort of like that spontaneousness. Like whenever I've had these types of things, it's always been spontaneous. I've never had like a camera handy, or, you know, when I try to plan something, it never works out exactly the way, but that's magic, right?
That's a given. If you try to capture it or to make film snippets, it's a given it won't work.
It won't work most of the times, at least.
Yeah.
I mean, we have seen quite a lot of strange stuff, especially around the area there, but also here in Graz. But it's always like, just look up in the sky and suddenly it's there, and it's just there for a few seconds. Or I once had a very strange experience there. It might be a case of this co-creation. We were standing there on a hill overlooking the valley. And this night there was not much going on. We were four people there, and we had a mutual friend with us, a female friend, and it was dark. It was quite cold, so she had to take a pee, and then it was a bit spooky. That the atmosphere that night was a bit strange. It was not as usual. There was something strange in the air. So she asked if someone could come with her just around the corner and like have a light for her, and so she doesn't have to walk alone in the dark in the woods. So I looked. I turned around. So we were looking down the valley, and just behind us there was a small slope, a small flattened area of grass, and then behind there was a group of trees. And so I listened to her asking if someone could have a flashlight, and I turned around and I grabbed into my pocket of my jacket where my mobile phone was, and I just said, "Yeah, no problem. I will come with you. I have a flashlight on my phone." And the moment I said the word flashlight on my phone, my right hand touched the phone in my pocket, and suddenly a flash of light came down from the sky and illuminated the whole area behind me, like a huge flashlight showing, flashing a light there. It was just the light circle. There was no light stream of light. It was just a circle of light moving around the meadow and around the trees for maybe 3 or 4 seconds, and it was over before everyone else could turn around and look at it. I was just crying out and yelling at them, and
we just heard their screams like, "There's a light!" We looked at the sky, but it was up there in the woods, and
it was like a huge flashlight, or like a huge like a light
beam,
like a beam of not the beam of light, just the circle running around like crazy, like a huge flashlight would shine down from the sky and just move around crazy.
That's like a cosmic joker, isn't it?
Yeah,
yes, totally.
It's like it has like this totally sort of funny sense of humor. I've been on locations like that too, where I remember being like, this is a long time ago, we were doing this spook light investigation in Canada, in Ontario. And the main spook lights, they turned out to be like car headlights. And I remember being on that road, and we had gone out to this location. It was very remote. And we had determined this point of this being car headlights. And we were all very like sort of, oh, you know, we've debunked this and we know what this is. And there was a group of us there, and there was one person there who was kind of a skeptical type of person. And I looked at his face because we were all facing in one direction and he was looking in another. And all of a sudden his face just sort of changed and dropped. And he said, "I'm seeing a light." And I'm like, "Where?" And we all turned around to look. We didn't see it. And he said, "I swear I saw this red blinking light." And from the location it was at, it was not car headlights. It was not anything explainable. It was in this dark patch of woods, and it was just flashing. And he just turned around, and then, but as we all looked, was gone. And it was like, it was almost as if saying, well, you've come out to this location and you figured something out, but you haven't figured it all out. You know?
That's typical.
Yeah. And of course,
trickster playing its game.
It is the trickster, and that is exactly what the UFO phenomena seems to be, a trickster, and with a fun sense of humor sometimes scary, but sometimes fun too.
And during this experience, during that night where I had this strange, whatever, synchronistic, whatever it is, each one of us 4 people had like a similar experience in another way. Like everyone had, there was not much activity going on, but every one of us had at least one event where a flash of light blinked in the sky, just from the corner of the eye, or no one else was looking at the same area of the sky when something happened for one person. It was very strange. Other times we had like collective experiences and lights zipping around in the sky, or pulsating or shooting through the air and stuff like that. But this night was quite strange. Like each one of us had this very individual, very strange, very tricksterish, whatever.
Yeah. And it's almost like it was listening in and saying, okay, you need a flashlight, here you go.
Yes, totally.
I mean, it was just, yeah.
I was going to say, how did your friend feel after? Like, was she able to go pee after that? I'd be kind of scared. I'd be like,
not really. We were
like, I don't know if I want to go pee in the woods now.
Yeah. No, not really.
Yeah,
we left after that quite quickly. No, we were still there for 15 minutes or so. But we then it was, as I said, a very strange atmosphere that night. I never experienced that before there, but it was a bit spooky.
Yeah, I loved this kind of atmosphere, and my most dense activities of high strangeness I experienced was in Romania in the Baciu forest.
I've got to go there. That is so high on my list to go to Romania, just to go there.
Let's go there together. I loved it. I was just there with a camera team. We did a documentary about vampires and folk magic in Romania, and so we stopped at the Baciu forest for about we would have been there for about like 2 or 3 hours, but I would love to be there for at least one night.
Yeah.
It's totally creepy. Really, I like it when it's spooky, but this place is it gave me the creeps, really.
Yeah, it's more than like you feel that sort of negative vibe from there. Like people say they feel a really negative.
Yeah.
Sort of,
yes, absolutely. It was not. It was not menacing. Mm-hmm. But very, very alien and strange and otherworldly.
Yeah. now you're intriguing me. Now I've got to definitely let me know if you go back, because like I said, I'm in the neighborhood now. I'm not that far.
Yeah, absolutely. You know? Absolutely. I think we'll put together a cruise sometime, and then let's investigate.
Yeah. I'd love to do some meditation there and see if I can sometimes I can really get a feeling, especially if it's like a nature spirit or something. In Canada, there is a lot of, in the forests, in that there you can come up with a lot of spots. It just is really, in my opinion, feels very hostile to humans. It doesn't want humans there. It's not. Whereas here in Italy, I've found some strange places that the vibe can sort of change. Like the energy seems to change from time to time, but nothing that really, I feel like here the nature is more accepting of its people. Like there seems to be more harmony between the nature, and that maybe because humans have been living here much longer. Whereas in places in Canada, there are places that are really untouched by people, and it's wild, and you can get that really sort of like, just back off and stay out of my, I don't want you here kind of thing.
Yeah.
So,
especially when Europe was full of Celtic traditions and cultures, especially the area where we live, like the whole Austrian area was a huge Celtic, some of the biggest Celtic settlements. And so like the town we live here in Graz, it's the second biggest town in Austria. There is like Celtic graves, and like basically the city is built on Celtic ground. So yeah, I think that and Celtic magic and what they did with the land, with the area, with well, let's call it nature for lack of a better term here right now, for establishing a cultural relationship with the other world and whatever. I think that's a huge part of the effect here, and a huge part of why it works the way it works, why it's a bit more harmonized and not that wild, so to say. But it's so far it's our experience. So
I totally feel that. The first time I came to Italy, I went to this Etruscan area, which is also, there were Celts there, because the Celts and the Etruscans at one point were in harmony, sort of repelling like the Romans back. And so they lived together, and you can see sort of the influence on each other. But I went to this place, it was a necropolis that was for Etruscans, and I had planned the following day to go to this sort of curio shop where I was going to procure like an animal skull. And at the time I didn't know this, but the curio shop, which is by appointment only in Modena, was not operational, and I had not like checked my messages to find out that I wasn't able to go. But I was at this Etruscan place, and I did some meditation there, and I didn't really feel the Etruscan people, but I could feel the spirit of the land itself. So after I did the meditation, I stopped to thank the spirits there, the nature. Especially, I'm humble, so I will always thank the most smallest of the spirits. But I felt a lot of gratitude for being allowed to be in that space. And as I was leaving, there was a deer skull, a female deer skull, sitting on the pathway that I had just come, like maybe about half an hour before. And it was just sitting there perfectly.
Whoa.
It was a gift. And I have it here. I brought it back to Canada. I packed it in my suitcase, brought it back to Canada. And then now that I'm living here, I brought it back again. And then when later on, like in that same day in the evening, I got this message, well, we can't have, they were having problems with their building or whatever. And they were sorry they couldn't open the shop for me. And it was like, it's okay. I have this beautiful deer skull that was like a gift. It was a gift from the land. So I feel very, very comfortable here. I've had a lot of synchronicities with the Benandanti, who were these good folk. They're the witches they were from Friuli, Italy is where we first learn about them. But I have later in my own research found that they are actually all throughout northern Italy, Austria, Hungary, and Germany. This was a group of witches that that saw themselves as sort of defending and protecting their people, while at the same time they were worshiping the goddess and the gods. And that is sort of, I feel so plugged into that, and so much synchronicity with that. But the land, I felt that was sort of that pivotal moment for me, is that I felt so at harmony with the land and so comfortable here that I knew that I've got to come here and stay. So,
yeah. Generally speaking, here in Central Europe, there are some places that are very strange and very, well, I wouldn't call it negative, but very, very spooky sometimes. But in general, because Austria, for example, is a very, very small country. We have like 8 million people living here. It's not very big compared to the United States. So there is not wild forests for hundreds of kilometers or something like that. So there's always has been this human animal spirit interaction in a way, because we have to live together here. And for whatever reason, as I said, there is, generally speaking, going out into the woods is very friendly, so to say. We don't really have wild animals and dangerous animals. There are some wolves sometimes. We don't really have bears or something. So it's very well colonized in a way, for whatever that's worth. But
an integration, I think, between and these, and like you said, the Celts and the pagans, and perhaps some of the Christians as well have harmonized with the nature and the land, so that there is this sort of a peace that I sometimes I wouldn't feel in Canada between the nature, because it was so wild. It was so almost hostile in a way of
and it's also
off.
And it's also people who live here and grew up here. We still have this Celtic ancestral aspects in our blood. Most of the people living here, so there's
and many other.
Yeah,
it's a
wild mix.
A wild mix, yeah. But there are many folkloric traditions that honor these old ways. They have been Christianized, and the church has appropriated them, but in its core they are still pagan.
Yes, and the land feels that, I think.
Yes. Yeah.
So it's perpetuating what was begun 1,000 years ago or more. You know. So, and where I'm located now, it's like I'm in the Apennines. I have these mountains surrounding me, and there's one mountain that I look at now in the morning when I wake up, and I can see it, and it's a place where both pagans and Christians were sort of drawn to. And the scholars say that it's because they were seeing lightning, but I think that perhaps it was more the light phenomena that perhaps was drawing them there as a place to sort of either commune, if you're from Christian, perspective, with God, or the Virgin Mary here, because it's Catholic. But for the pagans, it was a place to go and sort of speak with the gods. It was a place of messages where they could communicate with the gods. And I've been up there, to the top of that mountain, and there is an old sort of an undercrypt that was Etruscan that they built, called the Temple of Lily. And from there, I've done some brief meditation, and it almost feels as if your soul itself can just detach there. You can really have a good out-of-body experience in that area. So I'm going to be monitoring that as well for light activity and seeing, you never know what could be happening there. And I'll let you guys know too.
Yes, please do.
If I see anything interesting. But I do plan to sort of visit a lot of hotspots, and I plan to develop a website, an English-based, because I'm just learning Italian, but I'm going to develop an English-based website on sort of areas here in Central Europe that I'll be visiting, hopefully near you guys as well, in Romania for sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's a big of an issue here, the language barrier. So there's a lot of stuff going on in German speaking countries regarding UFOs, regarding high strangeness, regarding magic, but it's quite hard to like break the language barrier and find an opportunity to bring those things into the Anglo-Saxon sphere. And it's the other way around too. Like a lot of really brilliant literature, like Jeff Kripal, the Reframing the Debate, and podcasts like Rune Soup or Where Did the Road Go and stuff. There's a lot of I'm not sure. The language barrier is really a problem here. Like that's. Yeah, so we hope we can add to that and bring more information into the Anglo-Saxon sphere and vice versa, more English-speaking content to German-speaking people, and
to bridge the gap a bit.
Yeah, you need to have both languages to bridge the gap, because translators only go so far, and
exactly,
especially when it comes to like folk magic and things like that, which could include colloquialisms and that if you don't know a language, you're never going to understand properly, So I think that is really important, and because there is a lot of really great stuff here. It's like I said, it's almost like it's rich. It's like the magic that can be tapped into here. I feel it is so just rich and wonderful, and I'm so excited to be in Central Europe.
I really loved Joshua Cutchin's approach to travel to Ireland and visiting the Fairie Force and stuff. So bringing more of that into especially the American culture and ufology and high strangeness ideas. Because there's hundreds of millions of people there, and so it could be very
and also around here in Middle Europe. We are steeped in these stories.
Yeah.
But what brought you to Italy in the first place? Was it the research concerning the Benandanti?
It was research, but it wasn't at first the Benandanti. The Benandanti was sort of like a happy accident for me. I was I've had a lot of synchronicity with a good friend of mine, Dr. Christopher Larson, and he had initially, when I was coming to Italy in the first place, he had mentioned to me about this Carlo Ginzburg, who it was a scholar who sort of looked into the Benandanti. He found the Benandanti also through synchronistic means, like in the 1960s. He was looking at Vatican from the I'm sorry, I'm tongue-tied because I'm still so decompressing from this big move to Europe. But anyway, Carlo Ginzburg found these documents that from the Inquisition that had talked about the Benandanti and these people, and he wrote these scholarly books about it that my friend had been inspired to actually pursue higher education through meeting this professor and learning that there are serious scholars that are working on witchcraft and magic and those sorts of traditions, and even in just a historical perspective. So he had talked to me and he had said, have you heard about this scholar and these witches? I think they would interest you. And I started reading about them, and I realized that in part of what they were doing, so they were protecting their villages, their land, and they were shape-shifting. And they would take the form of a wolf, and the wolf that they would transform into would protect them from these, what they would term back in the 15th and 16th century as the bad witches. So they were the good folk, which is what Benandanti kind of literally translates into, and these other people that were cursing their village or causing trouble, and that they were bad witches. And they would transform into wolves to sort of do these night battles. They would battle with these other beings, these other people. And what grasped me about that is when I was small, when I was a child, I used to sort of be bedeviled, for lack of a better word, by these little beings that I as a child interpreted as ghosts. I now think that they were more probably in line with UFO beings, like little grays or something like that, but they were little people and they would frighten me. And as a child, I would have this wolf come, and the wolf was talking, this large talking wolf, and it would protect me. And later on, as a young adult, and as I started getting interested in psychology, which is something that I had wanted to pursue at one point in university, I sort of realized that the wolf was actually myself. I was transforming myself into this wolf, so to speak, to protect myself. And then when I just something about the idea of transforming into a wolf to protect, which is what the Benandanti were doing, it just sort of grasped me as, hey, this is something that, sounds similar to me, that I sort of was doing in a very shamanic sort of way as a child. And from there, I just started researching and reading about them more and more and more. So I didn't really find out about them until about 2 or 3 weeks before I came here the first time. And then in the second time I came here, I was concentrating far more on the witches. And then it just sort of pulled me in. And so, and I do feel like my family originally, I was born in Canada, but my mother was Bavarian. So I have my whole family from there. And then my father was from Austria and Hungary. So I feel sort of, culturally, I feel sort of really well here in Central Europe. So I feel like it's the place I need to be in right now.
I find it quite interesting because there's a lot of similarity from what you told about the shape-shifting aspects. I mean, like everyone knows the skinwalker, even if it's all sometimes a bit appropriated, the term, but
yes.
But also in Ecuador, I like are you familiar with the anthropological work of Eduardo Kohn and his concept?
No.
He wrote an amazing book, How Forests Think. He spent several years in Ecuador with the Runa people, and they have this concept with shape-shifting, especially into a jaguar, and interacting with the animals, and the shape-shifting aspect is an amazing concept. Also, De Castro's perspectivism. So, like, there's a lot of amazing stuff going on, and it sounds very familiar to yours. And I can send you the name of the books and stuff later.
That would be great. Yeah, please do.
Amazing new perspective on how to view the world, and how the concept of the shape-shifting plays a role, and shifting the perspective between different aspects of reality, so to say. It really opened my eyes, and it's regarding so. But it just sound they basically do the same stuff like you just described.
Yeah. Oh, that's amazing. I would love to read more about that as well, because I mean, it's also exploring, I guess, the different cultural aspects from where he's located. And then, I've also thought the same thing about Skinwalker, like with these beings that are sort of maybe protecting their land, or some of the things that maybe American researchers are viewing as horrific, maybe just simply messages from nature that they're misinterpreting.
Yeah, sometimes it just can be, for example, when you take the Runa people, there's sometimes people go crazy when they spend too much time, or they within the concept of the animals, they can lose their human perspective and their human aspects, and they go basically crazy, and then those jaguars and spirits go crazy as well, so to say. So, and then they start hunting people, and they start to attack people, and so they really have a huge concept of how to deal with that, how to turn into an animal, how to turn back, and it's a really, really great.
That's amazing. Yeah, please do send me the link. I'd really appreciate it to the information, and I'll definitely get that book.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And it will be in the show notes as well. And we plan to do a special show about this kind of worldview. Just a heads up to our listeners. I would have wondered if we would not have had some traditions like these as well in Europe.
Yeah. Well, this is what the Benandanti were doing. In part, this was part of their protection of their crops and their people and their villages, was to shapeshift into the wolf, and that is how they sort of protected their lands. And that is what really grabbed me, because I never really considered before, well, maybe I have some connection to that, or that tradition, because that was initially when Ginsberg was researching this, and he wrote the book about the night battles and the Benandanti. He was concentrating on Friuli, which is in northeast Italy, and but later on, as he expanded his own work, he realized that these people actually were part of a much larger tradition, and found similarities with others as far as Estonia, for instance. Mm-hmm. And in France and in Austria and in Germany, and that this was a much larger group of people. But it was just that initially he had found the Benandanti through these records that was kept by the Inquisition. Sorry, the Inquisition. Hard for the witch to say, right?
Yeah,
yeah, absolutely.
Fit that out, but yeah, I think that there's definitely a strong tradition with that. So it's interesting that it can be we can maybe look at other cultures and see that they're doing that as well with animals that are in their neck of the woods.
I just find it interesting that the wolves are coming back to Austria, for example. There have been no wolves for I don't know how long. They were basically hunted and just, there were no wolves here, and they just came back like last year or this year. There were first wolves in northern Austria coming back from over the Czech Republic border, and so there might be some like reawakening, re-enchanting the world, and especially here the area. So it might fit that the wolves are coming.
Yeah, no, I would love
your way
that.
to Italy and Austria. So. Yeah.
Oh, they're here too. There is a wolf pack here, but I think as well that they're relatively new. Mm-hmm. But there are wolves in this general area, so that would be amazing to see that. I would like to see more of a resurgence of the, like as you said, the re-enchanting of our world. I think we need that desperately right now, and all these things, including I think the resurgence of the wolf is a good sign. Yeah.
Definitely. But what's your personal experience with magic? What has been your way? Do you call yourself a witch, a chaos magic woman? What's your?
I try to avoid labels, but I guess
I see.
Witch is probably not Wicca per se, but witch is probably the most accurate term that I think that we could use. For myself, I could also label myself, I guess, as a chaos magician. I try, and ever since I was a kid, I've sort of tried to smush different things together to see how they sort of work. And then I'm very into numbers too. My birthday is the 23rd, and it is the actual 23rd day of the year, so that I've got the double 23s. And then when I was first coming to Italy, I was getting a lot of 1111 in places, so I was sort of contemplating the synchronicities around that, and so I guess a witch who is sort of eclectic. I do all sorts of different things, but and pagan as far as I sort of accept many different gods and goddesses, but I can't really label myself in one specific tradition. I sort of pull from many different traditions. I am Celtic, sort of my background. I do have some Irish in me as well, mostly Central Europe though. And I'm sort of interested in exploring sort of those folk magic traditions as well. But I think that there's a lot here as well in North Italy that has been, like, there's a lot written about Southern Italian folk magic, but I haven't been able to find a lot as far as Northern Italy goes. But maybe I'll sort of forge a bit of my own path as I'm sort of meeting people and learning different things, and, you know. So I can't give myself a specific label. I borrow little bits from different things, different traditions, and I read a lot. So
yeah. So the Demeter in your name alludes to your most beloved goddess, or?
Well, it's actually my real name.
Really? You have been named after Demeter?
Yes, wow. That is my real name.
Wow.
Yeah. Nice. And my sister is Diana Demeter, so she has the double goddess. My parents were a bit, yeah. So no, that is my actual name. So it's been interesting having that as a moniker. Some people have, think it's really cool, and they're like, "Is that really your name?" And it's, yeah, she's I'm the namesake of a goddess. But yeah.
Okay.
So yes, I do feel a closest to her. She isn't the only goddess that I would work with. But also I'm very, like I said, I tend to try to be very humble in my magic, and I tend to focus more on the local sort of nature spirits and sort of the ones that are maybe less thought of. I don't tend to really conjure great demons or anything. So,
What's your take on the Fae Folk connecting these paranormal phenomena and the folk magic traditions?
Oh, I think they're absolutely related. The Benandanti, for one, as far as magic and witchcraft go, they did do the fairy processionals along with the goddess. So they were working with the fairies. The fairies seem to be very much interwoven with all of this. And I am a huge fan of the work of Jacques Vallée and his ideas towards the UFO phenomena being represented in earlier cultures, particularly the Celtic version of the Fairie Folk, and that a lot of what's being described in more modern terms, if you look back in the literature, they were fairies. They were, Josh Cutchin has done a lot of great work on this, including like the idea that some of the things that we consider today would like an alien implant was being described centuries ago in Europe as the fairy wind. And it's the same. When you break it all down, it seems to be the identical phenomena. So I think fairies play an integral role in this. I find it all very fascinating, these little threads that connect all these things together, including us as modern people studying these things. I find synchronicities in what I'm doing and my past and my family and things that went on with my own family and what I'm doing now. And I've even tried to map these out sometimes. It's not always easy, but sometimes with the bigger synchronicities, I map them out, and then it's like, oh, so this is why this is happening this way, and But I do feel that they are connected, absolutely.
Yeah. Have you had any direct personal encounters with the fairies?
With the Fairie Folk, not directly, but indirectly. I will occasionally make offerings to them. I have asked them for things before that have been answered in sometimes indirect ways or sometimes very creative ways. But I do keep like a fairy tree. I do make offerings to the fairies. They are what I would consider more of the local spirits. The ones here in Italy tend to be, at least by tradition, very trickster-like. So you have to be very nice with them.
Yeah.
And very respectful, because I view this as their space and I'm just sort of the visitor here. I also want to explore a little bit more the fairy traditions in Südtirol, in which they have like that sort of rich in the Dolomiti Mountains sort of folk traditions of fairies that have literally gone into the mountains under the lake and just to avoid people.
Yeah.
Like they're waiting for the humans to,
we've got many legends about that here in Austria. That's one of the most prevailing topics about our local folklore. It's about the small people and their huge treasures in the mountains.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And we also have a like huge underground tunnel systems here. Like you can't really date them. There are some experiments being done that might indicate there might be 20,000 years or older, and a lot of them have been destroyed by the church over the hundreds of years because all of the legends, because of all of the high strangeness effects around those underground tunnels, like the Fae Folk coming out from there, the demons coming out from there. So the church started to destroy them, like flooded them, and they rerouted whole rivers to destroy the underground tunnels and stuff like that.
Wow.
So that's where we live here, all around Austria. And so the underground aspect of the phenomenon is quite strong.
In North America too, like even like with Skinwalker Ranch, and then other places in North America where the phenomena seems to be coming from deep within the ground. Yeah.
The mound builder culture as well, and everything. We've got a permanent exhibition near Graz in one of the castles around here, where the ways of the witches are mapped, where they flew over the country. And funnily enough, their routes resemble a lot the ways of the subterranean tunnels.
Mm-hmm.
So there is much research to be done about that.
Yeah, well, and same here. Like there, more in central Italy, there is Mount Sibillini, which was a place where people would do the processionals from all over Europe. That they would be going to this cave to have visions and to seek this oracle that was in there. And the cave, I don't think exists anymore since there were recent earthquakes. But for centuries, there were people all sort of doing these sort of magic processionals going there for that same reason, and the basis was that you would go in and you would commune with these witches, and then you would go flying like from the cave. But I mean, it all sort of centered in going underground into this cave-like structure and then flying off. And in some cases, they were using boats, where they would describe, according to this literature, that they would go in these boats and they would fly, which to me sounds very UFO-ish. And the same sort of thing was happening in North America with the Native American Indians in the area where I lived in Canada. Is they had a cave, which they called it like the village of the souls. You would go into the cave, and then you would go into the village of the souls. And then you would also, from this point in the cave, sometimes they would fly in what was called this flying canoe. So, which is a boat. So I find it interesting that, some of these stories are separated by centuries and an entire ocean and very different cultures. And yet there's these similar sort of threads between them. That also, again, it has something to do with the underground, or it begins in the underground. So you go into the underground to sort of, I guess, like almost, I guess, an initiation, and then you go flying.
It reminds me of, the ancient Greek cults, like the mysteries of Ulysses and. That was a Demeter cult. Yeah.
The illusion mysteries. Yeah.
And all the other cults, they were always connected to some chtonic entities or subterranean connections.
Yeah. Yeah, so there seems to be something to that, and then all the way up into modern times. And I know in the United States, they would refer to this strangeness as like these Tommy knockers, and this would be in the mines where people would be mining. I know Stephen King wrote the famous book, but I mean, there are actual stories of strange things going on, occurring around old abandoned mines, or even current mines where they were digging deep into the earth, and then they would have sort of high strangeness like experiences with beings, or sometimes described as miners that had died in these sort of mining caves. And so there seems to be something with the idea of earth and the underground that can produce these sort of paranormal experiences, right?
Mm-hmm. Totally.
Or these or experiences with these other sorts of beings. So it's interesting to find out for me about the caves where you guys are. Is this also in the UFO area, like these tunnels and these underground subterranean areas?
Not quite, but close.
Yeah.
I mean, Austria is small, so it's basically just around the corner. So, and as I said, a lot of the tunnels had been destroyed, so we don't really know. I mean, we work relatively closely to the main researcher here, a former professor from the university.
He is still professor.
No, a former. I think he was basically kicked out, as far as I know.
Really?
Yeah, we can talk to him later. But yeah, he does a lot of research there. He encountered quite a lot of problems, and surprisingly, also some support from the local churches. He went into the archives and could dig out reports and stuff. Oh,
I think you've cut out your sound.
Okay, then
we can edit it out, no problem.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, we had some high strangeness there, I think.
Or maybe just a bad internet connection. Happens sometimes here.
Yeah, but it happens all around these tunnel systems. There are UFO sightings as well as orbs and of course the old legends, and it seems all to be connected somehow.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Gordon White has done a quite interesting work. Are you familiar with this book, Starships?
I don't have that one. I have his other one, Pieces of Eight, but I don't have Starships.
But Starships is a really, really amazing read. And in his premium membership area, he also talks a lot about the cave, the role of the cave in Aboriginal traditions and tribes, and how they enter caves and how they use the cave to enter different states of trance and for making contact with the spirits of the land and stuff like that. So
basically, the cave is a portal,
more or less, yeah. Or specific stones and stuff like that. So. And he also, I think, he briefly talks about. He even mentions just briefly the underground tunnels in Austria, it's a must read. I think from giving a broader context of star lore, of Egyptian magic, of Pacific cultures, and how the stars and the earth and how they all interrelate, and the magic around that. Really, really amazing read.
Well, I'm going to have to add that now. You're giving me a lot of good information to sort of add to my reading list. Yeah, no, actually, I was aware of Starships. I haven't had a chance to read it yet, but I'm going to move that up on my reading list for sure.
You're going to love it. It's great. Yeah. Do you know if there are still some?
Again for me. I can't hear. I can see you. Like the video's good, but I can't see you.
It will come back on, I think.
Oh no, there it is.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay, that's weird. So I don't know why this is happening.
That's unusual.
We can hear you basically. Also, it's just obviously you can't hear us sometimes, but we can hear you fine when you talk.
Okay.
Yeah, it's unusual for Zoom. Normally, it's totally stable, but
we never had that.
That's so strange.
Yeah,
because I've had a pretty stable internet connection here. Yeah.
Yeah, it's so.
That's weird.
I resume my question. Do you know if there are still some Benandanti or descendants of them operational in the area?
I believe so, but I also think that because this is a predominantly Catholic country, that, and then it's also, you have the opposite end as well. You have a lot of atheism here. I think that these people are mostly underground. Like I've met people here that I suspect are magical people. you kind of can tell, but I think I'm going to have to spend a little bit more time in the community here, and sort of maybe do a little bit of outreach. But I think it can be very hard for people. There was a politician here recently who tried to get a teacher in trouble for reading fairy tales because the fairy tale included a witch. And they were saying, well, this is teaching children evil or whatever. And I was just shocked that, like, this is the fairy tale. It's like, like Hansel and Gretel. Come on. But I mean, the connotation is that even though this is a fairy tale witch, that somehow witchcraft or witches are bad or evil or,
Sounds a bit like the fundamentalist Christian preachers in the US, like, you must not read Harry Potter because
exactly. So I think if there are Benandanti, they probably are underground, or just they're doing their own thing quietly off the sort of grid. And I can respect and understand that. It's difficult. Even like as a mom, my kids are all older now, and I feel I can be open about my beliefs, but when they were younger and in school and that especially, I was more quiet about my interests, and including UFOs, because, people can judge and then they make it harder, So I don't know how I would feel about, like, if I was living here and, I had young kids or something coming out and saying, okay, I'm a witch, if people are going to brand you as somehow evil or bad or, you know how it is, right?
Could happen in Italy still, yeah. I mean, I know some chaos magicians in Italy, just a few. There are not that much, which is, I mean, Austria has a rich culture of chaos magic and neo-paganism and stuff like that. And there are some traditional Austrian family lines that like seem relatively similar, but it is hard to get in contact, even if you have been into the magical culture here for a decade or longer. You really have to get to know them. They are not that outspoken. They are very closed communities and family traditions. There are some people that are you can earn their trust in a way, or you get in contact via some group meetings, and then you get to know one who recommends you to meet someone, and you know how it works sometimes, and you can earn the trust, and then when you see that you're quite serious in your practice and in your approach to magic and stuff, then sometimes they open up. But it's still, even in Austria where it's not that harsh from the church, it's still very, very close. And in Italy, I mean, historically, it's interesting because Italy was a main hub for magic and the grimoire traditions and stuff. Through Venice and Florence and
and here in Bologna as well.
Exactly.
As far as like alchemy and all that, I mean, being the oldest university, there's the tradition of the alchemists and the astrologers and that, but there was also witch burnings and other horrid things that were going on. So that I think that has driven a lot underground, or people are more quiet about their magical and magicians in general, as you know, we keep our work to ourselves, at least,
especially in those grimoire traditions.
While the work is ongoing. Right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, especially in the grimoire traditions, it's more work for individuals, and not that much of a group approach. And there are some magical traditions going on. They're more in a ceremonial magical way, but they're still, most of them are embedded in a more Christian culture. Very so the folk traditions, it's really hard to. It's even hard to get to know Italian magicians, like ceremonial magicians and stuff like that. But the folk traditions is always hard to get into, and it's just coming up like chaos magic. Never really. It's like the culture is very split. It's either very Catholic or it's like this. Underground folk magic, but everything else doesn't really get a grip there. Like chaos magic never really had this surge or this impact like it had in the German-speaking countries, for example, or the British Isles or something like that. So it's really hard to have this eclectic chaos magic approach, or like this postmodern and or postmodern approach to magic, with all its benefits and drawbacks. But it's really strange that it's not that open for such a new ideas in magic. You have this very strict orders or this very hierarchical structures if you have some groups there, but most of the time it's family traditions and.
Yeah, no, I agree. And so it depends. Like if it's meant to be for me to meet other magicians here, then it will happen. But for now, I'm just sort of happy kind of doing my research and sort of practicing my own sort of brand of like you said, postmodern magic, trying different things and seeing how that works. Because I feel that there's sort of a pull here, so sort of a closeness to the land itself, particularly after that experience with the skull, that I feel that for whatever reason, this is the place for me to be at this point in time. So what goes on in the future, we'll have to see. But certainly as a chaos magician, I'm used to being sort of a self-practitioner. And you had mentioned the grimoire tradition as well, which is something that I do. So I'll just see where the future, where it goes. Certainly I'm going to be, recording all these things, and eventually it'll probably be a book, whether it's a book about the Benandanti specifically, or it expands more into a book of magical practice here. We'll see what happens with that.
Okay, that would have been my next question. What are you working on right now? Is it specifically for the book or the website, or?
It's for the sake of magic.
Yeah. Okay.
Right now, I'm trying out different things, and I'm seeing where this sort of goes. It will be UFO related for sure, because that is the greatest pull. But I feel that all of these little threads are pulled together. So I do have some general ideas of how I want to write this book, but there's still pieces that are missing that I think will come together in the next year as I'm doing more stuff and as I develop a website that, like I said, will be more, well, it's going to be English language based, but it will be sort of my perceptions of places that I will be visiting here that have a sort of paranormal background, whether it's ghostly or more UFO related or whatever else I might encounter while I'm here. Don't know.
Yeah, that sounds like we should really get together and do some experiments and invocations and so on.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I'm definitely down for that. And we can sort of brainstorm a little bit on ways to sort of work that out. And I can do that remotely, or potentially I can come out and visit you guys in Austria. I'm close now, so
yeah.
And I'd love to visit Austria. So yeah.
It's beautiful, and we've got many other places to show you, also very close to Graz. There's the.
What is going on?
Oh, have I been cut off again?
This is so weird.
Yeah, okay.
This is so weird. Yeah, so that's strange because it's both of you guys I can't hear, but it's fine.
Yeah.
It's okay.
It's just a bit more editing work for me.
Yeah, little pixies are
involved
here, I think.
Yeah, the internet trolls.
The internet. Well, I have my own views on the internet being sort of a sentient being that we've been feeding into, or at least it's morphed into that. Because sometimes I have very strange synchronicities with technology that goes beyond, say, algorithms or Google listening in or things like that. It's things that I might think of, which I never type into the computer, and then I'll have a sync with the tech. So who knows?
And there's also a lot of
trickster here
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of chaos magicians trying to work with the internet and sending like signals through servers and stuff like that. And I mean, for me, it's a bit, I'm not that much of a tech guy. And for me, it's still an issue. Like some of the paradigms they work with, they don't sound that profoundly thought through. But there's a lot of internet magic going on, so it might mess around with it. I have no idea.
You never know. I mean, I've tried a few things with sigils, but nothing that should cause any problems. Just sort of experimenting a little bit with that idea. Sort of, I've never done like the meme magic and that seems to be floating around. But I mean, well, whatever. I see why people find it interesting to sort of work with.
I'm not that big of a fan of a meme magic, but there's a lot of very strange stuff going on from some chaos magicians that has nothing to do with meme magic. But that's another topic. Just wanted to mention there could be.
I mean, if there's a perfect playground for tricksters, it's the internet.
Yeah.
So.
Well, there's been trolls from like day one, so absolutely.
Yeah. I think it's for sure that we stay in contact and share our experiences. And if people are interested to get in contact with you, where can they reach you?
Well, I do have a website, which is susanstclair.com, and I have a couple of other web projects that I'm going to be linked to from that main hub. I can send them to you, and if you want to post them in the links. For sure, definitely we'll stay in touch. I would like to sort of maybe work with you guys a little bit, and your location particularly intrigues me because it sounds like you're having a lot of like light activity or UFO activity, and the story of how cheeky it was with the flashlight, like that just sort of intrigues me. That's just like totally in my wheelhouse because I like that sort of trickster like effect. And maybe we could do something remotely, and I'd like to hear more about your experiences in Romania too. So definitely we'll be chatting, and I'll be letting you know how things are going here for sure.
Wonderful. There are lots of stories to share, and I'm looking forward to it. Looking forward to meet you as well. I hope it will be soon.
Yes, and you know what? If you have me on another time, I will make sure that I'm video presentable.
No problem at all. Thank you so much for taking your time shortly after arriving in Europe, and thanks for talking to us.
Well, thanks for having me. And and like I said, I wish I was a little bit more with it. I'm sort of, like I said, I'm still unpacking and decompressing and sort of finding my way around here. But I'm sure like in the coming months, I'll have a lot more interesting things to tell you, at least from the European perspective, or, coming from outside and now living in Europe.
Yeah,
I'm very interested in that because I'm come from a magical family tradition myself, so it's been a great point of interest for me. Let's stay in contact. Let's share our information, our stories, and talk to you soon, I guess.
Okay, thanks so much, guys. It's been great, and hopefully no more little internet bedeviling stuff when you're editing this.
Thank you, Susan.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
You've been listening to a production by Edition Prequel and Edition Gwydion. Intro and outro songs from the original soundtrack of Pantherion. Lyrics by Jörg Vogeltanz. Music by Christian Gschier. Text by Diony. More mysteries, mindfuck and magic at YouTube/Reicherstark and www.reicherondstark.at.